All right, so I am on UK time all day today. I have another UK guest coming on tonight, a friend of mine in Liverpool. And so I did not realize until Saturday that you guys did not have a time change because we just had a time change. So now you're 5 hours ahead of me instead of 6. So I've had my world clock has been on all day.
Oh, nice.
London time.
Organized. Yeah, it's a pain in the backside. Like I don't get why it's still a thing. I know that over in the US you've got things potentially going forwards to stop daylight savings, but from what I've seen in the UK, there's no such hints of anything happening here.
Yeah, so you guys don't ever change time, is that right?
We just don't ever change. No, we do. We change. So our clocks go forward next weekend, which will be the weekend of the 28th, and then they go back in, I want to say August, maybe. I don't know. I don't keep track of it, but yeah, twice a year, same as you guys. Just for some reason, it doesn't align up, and it's about 2-3 weeks off because it throws them. I have a lot of calls with people in the US, and it throws them off as well, just because every 6 months it just kicks it off for about 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. And then we just lost an hour of sleep. So that was, this is I like the fall because then we gain an hour and I'm like, oh, I can stay up later. I get an extra hour of Netflix late at night.
And then you lose it again. And I had it once. I was out, this was during my university days. I was out in the nightclub and the change happened during the thing. And there was one year where obviously you get an extra hour of partying. And then another year you look at your clock and go, like I'm sure I haven't been out for that long, and you suddenly realize at the time is going, oh, that's why.
Yes. Well, welcome, Daniel. It's awesome to have you on the show.
Yes, I'm excited to be here.
Yay. Okay, so you are a best-selling author, an award-winning podcaster, and like 50 million other things. I was looking at your bio and I was like, wow, you need a vacation.
I do. I'll be honest. Like it's been years since I've actually had I say years since I had a proper break. I've had a couple of sort of local breaks, but I am very much one of these people that is a recovering productivityist, and I'm trying to work more rest into the schedule. So yeah, I'm definitely in need of it. But at the same time, it's been a fun few years getting into this writing business.
Yeah. I'm a workaholic, so I get it. And I need to take your advice and work in some rest breaks.
Yes.
I'm going to work on that.
Well, the hard thing is, because I get this a lot, especially when I was sort of a bit earlier on, was I would take a break or take sort of a few days and go, right, I'm not going to do anything writing related for these few days. And what I learned was that made me miserable, because there's a real difference. Or I sometimes sort of compartmentalize in my head writing work, which is work, and then writing work, which is passion, because I like the words, I like the creation, I like, creating and doing things. So if anything, if somebody said to me, take a week or 2 weeks where you just did nothing to do with writing and you did everything else, exactly that kind of reaction, that would make me quite unhappy. So I'm coming to peace with the idea of, instead of saying not at all, saying only if you feel like it. And then if, inspiration takes you and you want to spend 10 minutes just on the computer on your time off, quotes, you can do that. And it's a bit different. But yeah, I probably am due a bit of a vacay.
Well, tell me a little bit about your writing background and your author background, and sort of how you got into that. How did your passion for writing begin?
So I think the simple answer is probably the same as many people's, which is I was always a bit of a reader. I enjoyed reading. I've always enjoyed sort of playing with words and having a bit of fun that way. I'm not one of these people that envisioned that I'd ever be an author. Obviously, it was one of those things that I thought, oh, this will be it'd be really cool if that ever happened. But it just didn't seem to be a realistic option for me, especially, before the advent of self-publishing and everything else. And I remember having a stab at writing a book when I was about, 7 or 8. And I'm in the dining room in my parents' house, just on my dad's really crappy old laptop, not getting very far at all, but just enjoying the idea of sitting down and typing and sort of crafting something. And it was this awful little sort of fantasy story about dwarves and elves that was about, it couldn't have been long, about 100 words or something. I didn't get very far. But that's kind of the earliest memory. But I was swept away as a kid with sort of the Lord of the Rings and the Harry Potter books and sort of a bunch of others. And I just played with words as I went through school and college. I found that I did okay in the subjects that were sort of English, literature and language. And then when I went to college, I decided to study English. And that was my first real grasp at anything truly creative, because we had a unit or a module in which we had to write a short story as part of the course. And I ended up writing sort of a horror inspired story that I was really happy with. You go back, because I've still got the story, you go back in hindsight and you kind of see how flawed and how pretentious it is and everything else, but it's part of the learning. And then, yeah, just over the years, I sort of worked my way as a career into, I got involved in editing and proofreading and sort of had to go at copywriting, and through a bunch of other different careers, I ended up working in marketing for a few years, and then really learned the power of how each word can very, very specifically be placed to make someone feel a certain thing, or to kind of like change the entire intention of a sentence or a paragraph. And yeah, I would say that kind of gave me the legs into writing and gave me the background of it. And then it was the year that my son was born, and I was actually my son's my son's mother's maternity cover. And there would be points where I basically had to teach music one-on-one in a school, and you probably have about a 40% attendance rate. So out of all those other lessons, I'm just sat in the room by myself for half an hour. And I'd recently read a book of short stories, and I thought, you know what, like I really, really enjoyed the idea of the short story craft. I'd never given it a go before. And I ended up sort of just in those downtime hours, just working on what turned out to be my first published novella, which was Sins of Smoke. And it kind of all sprang off from there.
Awesome. Well, why horror? What got you into writing horror?
It's a really difficult question to answer, because I think people want you to say like you've had a really traumatic background, or like there's something inside you that just like enjoys watching people suffer. But I mean, the truth is that the horror community is some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. I can see where people's perceptions come from, but I don't know how I got into it initially, because from all the things that I used to read, I would have predicted I'd probably go into fantasy. And the first thing that I really tried to work on was a fantasy book. And then I realized how big it was to go from having never written anything of substantial length to suddenly going, I'm going to write an epic fantasy trilogy. And I got about 10,000 words into that each time and then failed. So I kind of went back to this book of short stories, which was a Stephen King book of shorts, which probably doesn't surprise anyone who, you know, is interested in horror. And yeah, I think there's something. So my background, so I always say that my childhood and sort of growing up was very vanilla. There wasn't, like, obviously there were bits and pieces of things that weren't all that preferred, but at the end of the day, I never really struggled for money. My parents were together. They're sort of still together now, and they provided as much as they could. There's nothing really that kind of would push me into horror by other people's ideas. But I think there's always been a part of me that's been a bit rebellious and wants to avoid fitting into sort of any particular niche and clique and way of doing things. And the beauty of horror is that nothing is off limits. So
that's
you
what
can
I
create
keep saying. I keep telling people that all the time. I'm like, there's no holds bar in that genre.
No, and it's gorgeous. And yeah, you literally can go anywhere. Like the whole point of horror, or, you know, there needs to be sort of a brooding sense of fear among the entire story. And obviously, like, a lot of things aren't very nice, but you can have some really nice moments in horror. And actually, it's the nice moments then make the bad moments even better if you can get those right and sort of scale it in the right way. But I think that's for me, that's primarily it. It is sort of the freedom to explore. And some of the horror books that I read, some of the better authors in horror, the way that they write prose, it is just poetry. And I really like the idea of using words to evoke reactions. And, you know, if I was to write romance, and I'm not in any way bashing romance at all as a genre, obviously, like it has its place, and like, but it's just not my kind of thing. But the way that I see the world doesn't relate to a romance genre. Like I'm not like a very sort of like and again, for fear of offending people, I really don't mean this. I am quite ignorant to it all, but like this sort of Disney notion of the happily ever after and everything else, like for me, that's just not realistic. And I use horror as a platform to explore the things in life that I haven't experienced and that I won't experience. And there's almost a sense of, like, I guess, preparedness that comes from just at least like playing in that sandbox for a while, so that if that, God forbid, that opportunity or that situation ever came up, that, you know, you'd be somewhat prepared. But yeah, I like dabbling in all the different parts of life. I like playing with characters, and yeah, horror, there is nowhere that you can hide.
Yeah, I'm going to start stealing your answer now.
Hey,
Do you get that question a lot? Because I am newly a horror author. I switched genres. I've always written contemporary dramas, and now I'm writing horror, and it came to me, and I accepted the invitation, and I love it. And it's actually where I feel like it's where I've always been meant to be.
yes.
Like, I found my people, I found my community, I found my place. But I get those looks. Oh, you write horror? What? Why? Because I can have conversations in horror that I couldn't necessarily have. It's a safe space. to have
Yes.
certain conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. And what the really interesting thing is that I found that there was a big fear going into horror that, you know, people that I know and people that I love would judge me for what I was doing. And, you know, in a sense they do, but it's sort of like very, very jokingly, because barely anyone that I know and love has read my books because they realize that it's not their genre. So even early on with some of the works I did, there are definitely elements of people that I knew that went into characters within the book. And then they've not read it. They're never going to read it. Any fear that I had, any kind of hesitation that I had that, oh no, maybe I shouldn't write this because, you know, this person's going to know. No one's touched it. Like my mum has read one of my post-apocalyptic books, which has elements of horror, but just like nothing close to the actual sort of darker stuff that I write. But you're right, it is quite difficult to explain to people who don't understand, because I think it's just too ingrained in society and culture that, you know, you're messed up if you write if you're a horror, just put it simply. But as you say, that's not really kind of the truth. And I like that you say how natural it feels to you, because I started in horror and then along my journey I've kind of dabbled in other things, but the entire time I always circle back to horror. And I do really think it is just that freedom of play and just doing whatever you want. And obviously playing with monsters is quite fun as well.
Well, tell me about being a full-time creative. So you're a full-time author, and there's a lot of people that I talk to who are full-time creatives. I myself am now a full-time creative as well. So love it. And tell me about that, and you know how that's working out for you.
It's, you know, it's like anything. I think it's beautiful being able to be in control of your time, and every day there's that kind of joy at the fact that the work that I get to choose is mine. Because I did spend a fair time sort of in corporate, and I had to deal with, you know, the bureaucratic politics and everything else that came from behind the scene. It's like I really enjoyed my old job and I loved the work that I did and I really enjoyed the team, but just some of the actual sort of structures in terms of staffing and everything, it was just one of those nightmares where you sit down and you're like, I want to do my work, but I'm getting pulled into all these other things I really couldn't care less about. And when I went full-time it was April 2019. And I think to start with, I think people have a lot of misconceptions over what full-time is, because I'm not sat here saying that all I do is write stories every day and then put them out and that's it. Like, honestly, if I could, I would. That would be gorgeous. But I also think that I'd probably do other stuff anyway. But I got very sort of fortunate at the time to get into ghostwriting, and I was writing my own books, which were beginning to sort of pick up and earn royalties. And then I started ghostwriting for some clients, and that filled in the gaps in where my income was coming in. And for a while, that was it. It was the backpack life of going around to cafes and writing, and it was sort of gorgeous and wonderful. And then sort of as time goes by, you start to get past the honeymoon period of, okay, this is what I'm doing now, and much more into the, okay, how do I look at the next 5-10 years? What is the business plan? Where do I go from here? And I've taken a fair few twists and turns along my journey, and sort of along that way have gotten more involved in the nonfiction and the coaching side of things. So my day at the minute is sort of split between creative writing, whatever that is, whether that's a ghostwritten project or stuff that I'm working on for myself, sort of marketing and advertising for my own business, and sort of building some of the stuff that I'm doing with my activated authors community. No 2 days are alike. I'm not a person that is very good with that sort of rigid, structured consistency, because then I just bore myself. But at the same time, like, there needs to be some sort of structure. So I try and like put sort of bullet points of things I need to do in my day, and then I work my day as it comes and how I feel sort of getting up, like whether I've had to work late one night and then get up a bit later in the morning. But it's, you know, it's definitely a lifestyle you have to get accustomed to, and it's not something for everyone. Because the reality is I spend a lot of my time by myself at a computer talking to people like yourself on podcasts, you know, for Activated Authors podcast or Next Level Authors. Sometimes I'll go out to a cafe, but most of the time it's me and me alone. And when you have that kind of pressure to run your business and to constantly look at the next step, there's a learning curve with learning how to shut your brain off at the points when you do try to take a rest, as we kind of alluded to earlier. Because if you're in that sort of salary job, or, you know, however it's working, but if you're employed by someone else, generally you have the option to take time off and you have sick days and you have sort of holidays that you can book and everything else. If you're working for yourself, you have to actively work to factor those in. So if I want to, so for example, it's my birthday next weekend, I've got sort of 3 days in which I'll be doing stuff sort of Monday through Wednesday. And in order to do that, I'm having to do extra this week to accommodate for the fact that I'm then going to be off for 3 days, and I have to, make sure people are covering different things. So, the reality is that at any level of being freelance, you are a boss, you are your boss, and you are employee. And you have to consider everything from human resources to marketing to finance to business to creation. And that's a lot of hats for one person to wear. So it's a life that I wouldn't trade, because I love what I do and I love the freedom of what I do. And, I have a 7-year-old boy, and I now have a dog, which is new in my life, and having the flexibility to be at home around that, sort of make the time when I want to go see my son in plays, or, if he has a half term, then I can look after him then. So the flexibility is amazing, but at the same time, it does definitely come with sort of a mental taxation that is quite heavy at times.
Yes. Yeah. And I have a 9-year-old, so it's nice to be there and to kind of incorporate him into the daily routine as well.
Yeah.
Or sometimes.
How long have you been full time?
Since the crap hit the fan in 2020, really, actually. Yeah.
Oh, man, yeah. It's a perfect time to go freelance.
Yeah. My day job, 2020 killed my day job, but I wasn't sad. So it was like that moment of, oh, this is what I've been wanting. So
yeah,
it worked out. It worked out really well.
Beautiful. It's nice when it goes that way.
It is. Yeah. But it was sad. My employer, she had owned the business for, 30 years.
Oh,
And
man.
so now she's had a whole life change, which has ended up being really good for her, but it was really difficult at first. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the other considerations, because this kind of, and I'm not saying it's future-proof forever, but this kind of industry is somewhat future-proof, because if you there's always going to be a need for story in whatever format that takes. So whether that's books, TV, game, however you want to write, there's always going to be a demand for story. And actually during the pandemic, this was one of the things that I was really thankful for, because there was a tiny part of me that was bitter, because I could get up and I was still working, and my income fortunately wasn't affected, and I was able just to carry on and work in the way that I have been, because I work at home and I kind of have my time flexible. But then my brother, for example, he runs a pub, and he was on furlough for 6 to 7 months, where he was just basically, I'd say he was bored, but he actually ran more than he'd ever done in his life, lost a load of weight, and got super, super healthy. So that was really fun to watch. But there was there's tiny bit of bitterness where I'm like, so you get 6 months off and you just get paid, and I have to keep working. But at the same time, I accept that even if I had been on furlough and unable to work, I probably in some capacity would have been writing and creating. So it's one of those things that it worked out well. But yeah, it's a future-proof industry, and it does mean that when things like the pandemic happen, we do have the ability to duck and dodge and try and find new paths to make more money in different ways. And I think people are saying, or I've heard on the grapevine that the pandemic has basically sped up the age of technology by at least 5 years. So many people have embraced Zoom as a way of communication, for webinars, for sort of events and different things. People just had to find a way. And that has been really, really fortunate for us, in that, I started coaching authors during the pandemic, and I've not met one of them in real life. So it works out really well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much more that we can do now. It's a medium, it's a space that has become normal. It's just the norm of everybody just getting online and doing this. And I like it because it just opens up more that I can do with the show. And so,
yeah, you can just reach different people from much, much further away. Just get a whole new world of talent, which is so, so exciting.
And you could be in your home in your pajamas and it doesn't matter.
How did you know?
One day I will be recording at home. One day. That's the dream.
Yes. Come on, Elon.
Yes. A friend of ours calls it Muskatron. So I am waiting for Muskatron to arrive.
I like it. Yeah. Have they got a date on that, or is that just still rumor at this point?
Oh, it keeps getting pushed back. So some people have it and some people don't. And we were supposed to get it last summer. We didn't. We were supposed to get it by the end of the year and we didn't. And now they've promised by the middle of 2022. And I'm not holding my breath. So
because I think it must have been about 5 years ago, they had, I think, Google Balloon. That was it was an issue. Google were going to put up a bunch of they looked like hot air balloons, just kind of like an infrastructure for Wi-Fi globally, but it came and went. I've not heard of anything about it since.
I think Jeff Bezos is now competing with Elon Musk because Amazon's doing something up in the sky. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's not going to be long until we can't see the sun.
Yeah, for real. All right. Well, let's jump into productivity, which is like this huge topic that is daunting. And I'm super excited to get some advice for you. I know my viewers are going to love it. And I should be taking notes. I don't have pen and paper.
It's recorded. You can always come back to it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But okay, let's talk about first why this is such a big topic. Why is it an age-old struggle? We're still struggling with it. We all struggle with it, or most of us struggle with some sort of productivity, and it's this hot topic. Why?
I mean, at the end, the sort of bottom line of it is that productivity is a very big buzzword now in general. And I think most people will agree that, they want to do more and they want to achieve more. And often they want to achieve more by doing less, which is ideally what productivity is. It's, how do you maximize your outputs at the cost of minimizing your inputs as best you can. And as writers, as creatives, we want to be producing more, because the more stuff we produce, the more products we can put out into the world, the more potential money we can make, depending, again, I come back a lot to whether that is your goal, because it's not for everybody. Like, it might just be you want to tell your grandson sort of your memoirs or whatever it is, but it's a hot topic. Number one, because it's absolutely friggin' everywhere. And, there's no lack of people trying to teach people how to be better, how to be faster, how to, minimize their inbox, to maximize the free time that they have, all these kind of tips and tricks. And it makes sense, because we live in a world in which for years and years and years, and sort of, I think most of it started around the time of the industrial age, when, they were looking at how you can go from people manually with their hands making the products to how do we put this on an assembly line and increase productivity, produce more. And we're now in a world in which technology makes everything so much faster. So we can send off 100 emails in a day, as well as check what's going on with like 300 different people on social media, also bash off like 10 things off our to-do list, say hi to the mum, just go food shopping. Like the amount of stuff that we can fit into our day is insane. And productivity, I say that there's 1,000 different people teaching it, and there is, but productivity is one of those things for me personally where I have been through a hell of a journey of being productive. I started writing in 2015. And once I learned that there was a true path to make money with writing and to have readers and to really kind of become an independent author, that was it. I was really looking for every second in the day in which I could advance and make things better. And for context, at the time I was engaged. I had 2015, he wouldn't have been one yet. So I had a newborn son. I was working a full-time job. At that point, it was sort of around 35, 40 hours a week. And then I'd just written my first novella. 2 years later, I had a 2-year-old. I was engaged in a relationship. I was working 60 to 70 hours a week. And I'd been promoted twice at my job. I then had 4 books to my name and a podcast that had hit, I think, probably about 500,000 downloads with the Other Stories Fiction podcast. So there was a 2-year period in which I ran fast, and I absorbed everything, absolutely everything, to make sure that every single second of my day was filled with stuff that was productive. I was running, I was meditating, I was listening to podcasts and cycling to work, I was doing my work, I was doing my best to be the dad that I could in the mornings and in the evenings, and like, it was a lot. So like, you can achieve amazing things if you work out how to make the best use of your time. Now, the cautionary part of that from my journey is that in 2018, I think it was, I basically came into one of the most intense periods of burnout that I'd ever had, because you can't run that fast for that long. And this, I think, is where a lot of the danger comes from today's sort of productivity mindset. It's that thing of like, I've had authors come to me and say, I've got this deadline, I'm not writing fast enough, I need to find more time in the day. And then you sit down, you have a chat, you analyze the different areas of their life. And not only are they not fitting in rest, but they have packed the day to the brim. So you literally go, you can't. And sometimes you do have to accept that there is a limit to what you do. And so the last few years really has been a learning curve for me to not look at productivity so much, but more as like sustainable, healthy productivity. Because I think arguably we could all do more with our time than we're currently doing. Like we could spend probably less time watching Netflix or less time like being addicted to Instagram and scrolling. But at the same time, we could also benefit very, very well from actually using real constructive time to rest, as well as looking at, because I'm writing a book about a lot of this at the minute. So kind of like my mind's very much in this, but you know, there are other things to consider. Like if you're an author and you want to write more words, you often think, oh, I just need to sit down more to write. Like, well, no, are you sleeping enough so that when you get to the keyboard or the paper, whatever it is you write on, you're then energized and focused enough to make use of that time? Because if I'm exhausted, I will write maybe 200-300 words in an hour. If I'm well rested, I can write 1,500 to 2,000 words in that hour. Like really finding a way to balance the other really critical parts of your life, like your nutrition and your exercise and sort of spending time with people that you like and taking time away from the page. It's such a balance you have to try and get. But if you can master it, if you can find the things that work for you, then it just makes a world of difference. And the one other thing that I'll kind of add to this, because I know I'm throwing a lot at you, is it's small steps. Like if there's one true thing that I've learned, it's small steps, and all you have to do is try to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. So if you know that you ate rubbish yesterday, just add something into your meal plan for that day that's a bit healthier. If you didn't drink enough water, drink an extra cup of water. Like true change doesn't happen fast and it doesn't happen easy. So a lot of becoming productive is just building slow, sustainable habits and looking at one thing at a time to change in your life, to then over the long term, then get those big results. And initially that's what I did. I looked at how to increase my writing pace. And then I looked at how to get a clearer head. So I started meditating. Then I looked at, exercise. So like a 10-minute run in the morning. Then I looked at X and then Y, and it went on from there. So, productivity is such a hot topic because we all want to achieve more and we all want to make the most of the time that we have on this earth. The question then becomes, how hard can you run and how hard will you run in order to try and achieve what you want to achieve before you slam into that burnout wall?
Yes. And that wall is real and it is hard.
It hurts.
And heavy.
And you don't know you're in it until you're in it, and it sucks.
Yes, it does. Well, I heard you mention something very interesting that caught my ears, and that is anti-productivity. And apparently there's a movement in that. So tell me a little bit more about what that is.
Yeah, so it seems to, and again, this is sort of a new concept that I'm becoming informed of from better people in the space than I am. But you have, on the one hand, you have this sort of very hustle mentality, productivity, which I kind of mentioned that I was in, where it's like, it's that tough mind mentality. People shouting you like, just work more, work harder. Come on, you only live once, all this kind of stuff. And it's true that you only live once, but there are many ways to do it. And so there's this sort of, what I kind of had come to start thinking more of like a toxic positivity movement, in which you see people burn out. Like I a couple of years ago was very involved in sort of a circle of writers that bought into the rapid release model. They were writing like a book every month, and they were releasing it like 4 to 6 week cycles of write and publish and write and publish. And they did really well with that for a while. But quite a lot of them now have come off that cycle and they've gone back to, okay, like I can't keep this up. And as someone who has, since being part of that cycle, develops quite severe pain in my fingers, that luckily that they're slowly getting better now that I've slowed down, but getting to a point where like I need my fingers to type, and if I don't have those, that's a real issue. And then I came across the concept actually from Cal Newport, who I want to say wrote Deep Work and has a podcast that is fantastic, of slow productivity. And there seems to be kind of what I'm saying. There's a movement towards productivity that is realistic, in terms of a sustainable model to keep you going for the long term. So rather than work hard for 3 weeks to the point that you then have to take 2-3 weeks off to recover, how do you work for that 6 weeks consistently and get better results, because you're being more realistic, you're being more fair, and you're just arguably living a better life? Because some people, don't get me wrong, some people do well on that cycle, and they work well from sort of burning the candle at both ends and just running and making it happen, and they like that, they love that excitement. But for a lot of people, that's not us, and it becomes more, how do you do it in a way that is healthy? So anti-productivity is kind of, I think, again, like a bit of a trigger word, but like it's anti that form of productivity. So I do now cherish my sleep a lot more. I don't sort of force myself to wake up at ridiculous hours like I once did. I have started, and it's a long process over the last year and a half, 2 years, I've started to reduce the amount that I take on at any one time, because there's this concept that I've come across a while ago of cumulative normalcy, which is the idea that you have a baseline of where you work or where you are now. You become more productive, so 5-10%, you start doing more. And then over time, that becomes your new normal. And then you add 10%, and over time, that becomes your new normal. And then over time, that kind of stacks up until you're doing 200 times what you were before, and you're used to it. And so anything less than that feels like failure. But it's not, because you're looking for that sweet spot where you can be productive in a way that it doesn't, there was definitely a period in my life for about 2 or 3 years in which I barely saw friends and family because I was just working. And, my health, although I was running a lot, although I was meditating a lot, like I ended up in sort of a small state of psychosis during the burnout, which, was this mental taxation of dealing with all of this stuff. So everything comes back in the end. And my aim with talking about this stuff with people is to try and, like, yes, increase your productivity. Yes, if you want to get up early and make more use of your time, try that, experiment, look at the different things that work for you as an individual, and then see if you can do it in a way in which it doesn't lead to you just destroying yourself from the inside out. So it's that is the kind of anti-productivity movement. It's this much more realistic view of what your body can handle, because we have to remember that even going back 10-15 years, we weren't bombarded by thousands of messages and likes every day, or things pinging to demand our attention. Like, if someone wanted you, they had to phone you or send a letter, and they weren't quick processes. Emails were just not, like, I've had 62 emails in the last 3 days, which for some people is loads, for some people it isn't that much, but it's just a constant pull away from the thing that I want to do. And as creatives, the one true productive thing that we can do is create. And that is the heart of where we should be. But we live in a world in which everything, quote, everything is important and everything's trying to grab our attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to shut off notifications. I only have notifications for text messages and Facebook Messenger, because people text me through that. I don't well, emails do come to my phone, but I don't get notifications for anything else, because my phone would constantly be dinging and going off. And then I feel the need to look at it.
Yes.
And then I can't just look at it. Oh, wait, let me do that thing for that person when I need to be focused on something else. So I just shut it off, because
yeah, we really are in an age where it's just hard. I mean, if you look at and this is more speaking for myself, I'm not sure how much this sort of spreads out to other people, but like, if I'm having some downtime in the evening, I end up watching reruns of shows that I've seen before that are like 20 minutes long, rather than a film that I want to watch, which is an hour and a half, 2 hours. Because in my head, I'm like, oh, I can stop it after 20 minutes. But I end up watching enough of them that I could have watched a film in the meantime. And I do, like, there is scientific evidence about the fact that because of social media, because of just, how quickly we can get things, our attention spans are so much shorter. There is less patience for delayed gratification in ourselves. So like you say, you don't just check that message, because then that will go to something else which needs your attention, and then something else, and then there's another notification. But really, like, what is important in that moment? What is truly important in that moment? It's, creating or focusing on whatever it is that you should have been focusing on before something went ding.
Right. Oh, exactly. And then I don't know if this has happened to you, but I find myself, I'll get on Instagram for something specific. Oh, I need to send a message to someone, or I need to check this one post and get this information correct, or whatever it is. And I have a specific reason for getting on Instagram, and I get on there and I've looked at 4 stories. I've scrolled a little bit. I've checked, whoever liked whatever. I get off of Instagram, and then I never did what I went on there to do. And so then I have to get back on there and like focus. So
yeah, they are very, very smart with how they design things. And I say they because I'm not talking specifically about Instagram. It's, everyone that's sort of contributed to this economy of attention. And yeah, it's hard to escape from. And I do want to sort of emphasize a point as well that, I'm definitely not immune to this. Like, the other morning I got really peed off at myself because I spent 45 minutes scrolling through reels. And was there any reason? Like, no, like, there was nothing in there that was worth my time. Like, I didn't come out of that thinking, oh, I'm a better person for this experience. I came out going, oh, that was that happened. But, we have to understand that although we are conscious beings, that, we have thoughts and we have the things that we want to do, and we have the best of intentions to go, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, Z today. we are led by a brain that is designed from a bygone era, that is reactive, that does want sort of those instant dopamine hits. It does want to feel good and to energize. And it's, it's hard to battle through that. And I don't think anyone's immune. So that's another part of sort of this toxic productivity, is the people who make it seem like they have everything absolutely locked down. And there's not a part of me that believes that they're immune to all of this stuff. I think it is, if there's anything I've learned, it's a constant battle of trying to just remind yourself of your processes, coming back, finding a system, tweaking that system, something throwing you off, and then tweaking that system and bringing it back. Like, it doesn't stop, as depressing as that is as a thought.
Yeah. And the key is what you said, is little things and small steps, and not beating yourself up. If you spend 45 minutes watching reels, then don't feel bad the rest of the day. Okay. So, you move on and you do something else, and you get back into whatever you need to get back into. But I think also we get a lot of guilt, or the defeatist thing that I think a lot of us go through, where then we just kind of shut down, or we are discouraged, and well, I guess I'll just pick it up tomorrow, and it's easy to fall into that, like, I ruined today was a wash. So I'll just try again tomorrow,
there are so many of those. I'll wait until Monday, or,
yes,
around beginning of December, I'll wait until New Year. Like,
how did you know? No.
But yeah, I mean, and again, I definitely used to be that type of person. And then I've realized, well, what's the point in waiting? Because I once started a diet on December 17th, which was one of the most painful experiences of my life, because obviously people don't know my mum, but she makes like loads of desserts and they are delicious. And I had to say no, and she was disappointed. I was disappointed, but why would I wait 2 weeks to start bettering myself? And, there are extreme examples, like you say, it could be small things, it could be big things, but start now. Now is always the better time to start.
Yeah. And if you wait until New Year's to start the diet or to eat better, you're just going to eat way more right around the Christmas holidays. And you're like, oh, wait, I've got, 5 days left until the diet. Let me just cram some more down my throat. So yeah.
Yeah. I had a year, when was it? I think probably 2015 to 2016, maybe, where all for Christmas in 2015, I just ate everything. And I said, let 2016 Dan mop it up. And 2016 Dan was pissed.
Yeah.
Just had to deal with the decisions of a few weeks ago. Thanks, Dan.
Yep. Well, we had a viewer question come in. Someone who is struggling with doing the bare minimum to get by. And I think she said she wants to learn how to not take the easy way out and do it right the first time, is her big life struggle. So what advice can you pass on to her?
That's quite a broad question. I'd ask you to ask yourself what you mean by the right thing. Because just from the phrasing of that question, I'd arguably say there likely is no right thing. All we can ever do is make the most informed decision that we can, and make that choice and go forward with the information that we have at the time. I know the pain. I feel the pain, because so the Activated Authors community, which is my sort of coaching nonfiction community where I help authors turn from writers into authors, is on its maybe third or fourth iteration of what it is. So it officially launched as Activated Authors in September 2021. Before that, it was Willcocks Writers. Before that, it was boot camp. Before that, it was just a 1 month long boot camp. And at each stage of that journey, I had that same question of like, how do I do this? How do I do this the right way? And I don't know that you can ever truly achieve the right way first go. You have to experiment, you have to start, you have to give it a go and just keep trying. But I know I assume that, where this question comes from is this idea of wasted effort. Like, you don't want to take the easy path, get it wrong, and then have to realign to try and do it the right way, because then it just feels like all that stuff you wasted. But honestly, like, life and every choice that we make is just learning from the past experience of what we've tried and just moving ahead. No one has the right path. No one has all of the answers. We keep trying things until they are successful. And that is an annoying but truthful part of the journey. And I've had things along the way, which I've definitely, well, I say quote failed at, but I don't really consider them failures. But things that didn't go the way that I planned. and I'm all the better for them. And in the long run, those have actually come back to help me in various different ways. Like I was a parkour / free running instructor from when I was 18 through till I was 22, 23. And then I had to stop classes for various reasons. I used to run events and stuff, and I haven't used those skills really since, until I started coaching and, you know, working with people. And now I'm looking at sort of events and things again, and things come full circle. But I'd say honestly, try and take that pressure off yourself. My main question back to you would be, what is it you're trying to achieve? And what is it that you uniquely and individually bring to that space? Because whatever that is, there will be somebody there that people need and people want.
And so for people who are struggling with that tendency to just do the bare minimum, you know, not wanting that, they're just doing whatever it takes just to get by, and they're struggling with that and maybe beating themselves up over that. How can they tackle that? That's a
Again,
hard
it's
question.
difficult. It's difficult without the specifics, but
Yeah.
I would, if you're struggling with the bare minimum, maybe question what it is that you're doing, because not everything should be that hard. And I know in some cases, depending sort of on mental health side of things, like it may be very, very difficult to reach that point. But if you're struggling to do the bare minimum, I always come back to finding, like, grounding yourself in what your why is and what you're trying to achieve. And if you know what that goal is, then all those steps have meaning and they slowly start getting easier. And if it's not working that way, then your why likely isn't strong enough. And you really need to kind of come back to, what is it you're doing it all for? I very much argue that if you're in that kind of situation in which, because we've all been in pits where it's very, very difficult sort of mentally to get out of there. Like I certainly still go through those every now and then, depending on sort of my energy levels and what's going on in my life. But if you can ground yourself, try and look at what that far off goal is, but then also, as we kind of said, like, take it step by step. Maybe the bare minimum is okay for that day and you take some of that pressure off. Maybe the next day you add something to whatever that bare minimum is, try it, see if it works. If it doesn't, try something different the next day. And also arguably potentially look for extra support, because accountability community can really help lift you out of places you're struggling in, because whatever it is that you are struggling with, you are likely not alone. Statistically, in a world of 7.8 billion people, you are not going to be alone in what it is that you're going through. And just knowing that someone else is feeling that as well sometimes is enough to work together to pull yourself out of that. So potentially reach out to some friends, family, find a community based around what it is you're trying to do, and see if you can, you know, find that extra hands to lift you forward.
Absolutely. You can't do it alone. We try to sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
Get in our own little bubble, but we need that community. We need that space. And I'm so glad that you brought up the whole failure thing. And I don't want to dwell on it too much, because otherwise this will just turn into the failure is actually success show. But this continues to come up on the show time and time again. And those things that we look at as failures, or things that didn't quite work out the way we wanted them to, but the lessons that we learn from that and how those actually can help us and guide us along the way. And that theme just continues to come out episode after episode. So I know it's something that's on a lot of creatives' minds, and it's something that it's a way to spin the way you look at it, instead of getting discouraged and getting bogged down in this did not work out the way it was supposed to. It's your perspective on it, you know?
Yeah, for me, to fail is not to try. It's as simple as that. Like, if you've tried and if you've given something everything, and I think even particularly with my fiction, like I write for me and I give my book everything. I put it out into the world. It does whatever it does. Like, if it's well received, great. If it's not, then that's, you know, it is what it is. But as long as I know that I've tried everything and done everything that I can with that book, then I'm happy. Like, what else could I have asked for myself? I physically can't do anymore because I did everything. And there's some kind of comfort and peace in that.
When that's success, you did the thing and you put it out there. You know, that there's success in that. And we've talked on the show before about defining what success looks like for you, because success can be different for everyone. And it's not always fame and glory and money. And like, cause I don't want any,
Yeah.
I don't need any of that in my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's just, it's so easy to get bogged down with that stuff. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
I know it's not exclusively a thing for creatives, but I think we definitely have to harden ourselves to that idea, because as a creative, there are so many different paths and so many people out there that won't see what it is that we're trying to do, or will try and knock us down. And if you don't have that thicker skin, if you don't have that mindset, it can be quite a hostile environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So final thoughts on productivity. I don't know. Like, I know we're going to go and you're going to give me some quotes. You've got some quotes, favorite quotes of yours, but anything that you want to leave and impart someone with anti-productivity, productivity, scrap it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think, it comes back to starting small and block stacking. If you are going to make real change, well, actually a quote that I come to a lot of the time is real change only ever comes from desperation, not inspiration. So it's in those moments of like, are you motivated by fear or are you motivated by joy? Like, it's preferable to be motivated by joy, but I know a lot of my decisions have definitely come in the past from desperation. But then it's down to block stacking. A lot of people will say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to wake up a better person. I'm going to sleep this long. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do this with my food. I'm going to call this person. I'm going to do all these things. And that's just too much for that to be sustainable, because if you do all of that at once, your body, we are built in a way that we like the familiar, we like the comfort of the sameness. Like, it's something we can overcome, but it's something that as a species that has guided us this long to safety and kept us alive. So there is a mental part of us that will really throw up friction against change to that magnitude. So again, start off small. Like at the beginning of this year, I fell out of the habit of working on some of my own stuff. So I just started off by saying, all right, for 20 minutes in the morning, I'm going to work on my own thing. And so I'd set the clock, like it'd be around the time I'd wake up anyway. I'd prioritize that, do that thing, and done. And it wasn't until 2.5, 3 weeks later, I was like, okay, now I'm going to add 5 minutes of running in the morning to do that. And, I think the statistic is to form a habit can take anything from, I want to say around 23 days to like 168 days. It's quite a big, they're not the exact numbers, but it's quite a big scale. And again, it's individual for each person. So what has worked for your best friend or your mum or your partner might not necessarily work for you. And just bear that in mind when trying to piece together the things that you want to do to improve. And then, as I say, just work on something small every day, make yourself a tiny bit better, but also, dear God, please include rest, speaking as a recovering workaholic.
Yes. And something where you can just decompress and shut your brain down a little bit. There's those sort of, I don't want to say mindless activity, but anything where you can just.
I wash up. I wash the dishes. That's one of my things. Yeah. Just give myself that time to spend a while there and just clock off, and then I'll kind of maybe go out for a walk or call a friend or just something.
Absolutely. Okay, well, tell me, give me your quotes. You've got 2 quotes that you're going to leave us.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah. So one of these, and it might be more for I guess people looking into the nonfiction and working with other people's space, but something I came across last year. It was the first moment I was ever, because I was driving listening to the podcast, it was the first moment I ever kind of like stopped and went like light bulb, like hold on. And it was from a guy called Rory Vader, who said, you are always most powerfully positioned to help the person you once were. And so for me, going into the coaching space and having this real sort of imposter syndrome over what can I bring to the table? How can I help people? What I have to realistically do is look back to who I was in 2015 when I started writing and say, okay, is the person I am now someone who would have been able to help that person? And the answer is yes. And so I've been able to kind of use that to give me the confidence to move forward and very, very specifically look at the lens of who I was, which somehow has magnified and helped other people as well.
Wow. I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that.
It was the way it was phrased as well. You are always most powerfully positioned to help the person you once were.
I'm gonna write that one down.
I like that.
I'll have a post-it note at my office.
Yeah. And then the other one is quite a big one. And it's kind of the way that it's phrased is, it's sort of religiously inclined, but the way that I see it is much more sort of, careful I say this, just less sort of focus in that direction. And it's one that probably a lot of people will be familiar with, but I learned this quote off by heart after watching Coach Carter years ago. And just over the years, it's just become truer and truer to what it means to me. And so the quote is Marianne Williamson, and it says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." And it's that last bit for me that really hits home. It's the our playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you, because it's this notion that if you can find the good in you, if you can sort of go out there and really embrace your passion and be honest about it. And, if over the last couple of years, I've definitely tried very, very hard in my journey to be transparent and honest about everything that I do. And in doing that, what I've seen is that other people around me have suddenly opened up and gone, oh yeah, I feel that, but I've never been okay saying this out loud. And it's just, giving yourself permission to be you then gives other people permission to be them. And it's a sort of domino effect. And again, it's something that I've just seen more and more as I've gone through my journey.
That is perfect. All right, we're just gonna end the show. We're done. And no. It's like,
that's it. It's done.
Yeah, no, man, that's wow. Okay, well, you need to email that one to me.
Yeah, I'll share that over.
I definitely want to save that one. All right, well, tell me about your podcasts. You have Activated Authors and Next Level Authors with Sasha Black. So
yes,
that's very exciting. You guys just have a great back and forth between the two of you. The way you guys interact is awesome.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no. So as you say, Activated Authors is a podcast which is a continuation of a podcast that I ran a couple of years ago, Great Writers Share, and its interview format is very much similar to this. So I get guests on the podcast, and I specifically talk about their journey, their lifestyle, creativity, productivity, all that kind of good stuff. And then Next Level Authors is myself and Sasha Black. It's kind of just, I don't know how to describe it really. Like, it's just us holding each other to account each week on our business as authors, because when we started it back in 2020, we were very, very similarly in the same place of where we were. We went full time around the same time, and it's just fun. It's just, we ask each other a question each week. We get sort of audience comments, and it's us kind of, again, shedding the light on what it's like to be an author. And then we do have another podcast, which is the Other Stories podcast with the Hawk and Cleaver guys, which is sort of the fiction horror podcast. And that is 20-minute horror fiction every single Monday. Nice.
All right. Well, where can we find you? Where are all of your socials? Where do you want people to hunt you down?
Yeah, so I am on all the socials at Willcocks Author, which is WILLCOCKS. I am at danielwillcocks.com for all of my fiction, all my goodies, and then activatedauthors.com for all my author coaching stuff. Awesome. All right. Thank you for coming on the show and spending your time to discuss all of these things. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to be on UK time the rest of the day. And then tomorrow, oh no, I can mosey back into Central Standard Time. Are you a night owl or a morning person? Oh, night owl all the way. And it's funny because I'll listen to you talk about getting up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, or I don't know how early you get up now, but I know I've heard you. Oh, I'm on 7 now. I'm much more. Okay. One of your guests gets up at like 5. And I every time I hear people say that, I'm like, I would be dead. I would literally just die. So my alarm goes off at 6. I did get up at 6 this morning. I generally kind of get up at 7-ish. But my brain wakes up in the afternoon, in the evening, and then I'm going until midnight, and then I have to force myself to shut down. Know yourself. Point proven. Like, everyone's different. Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I will hopefully chat with you soon. It's been great. And again, thank you for coming on, and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll talk soon, I'm sure. All right.